Christos Anesti. Christ is risen. Today we have a very, very special guest. The first time a general, as I know, has ever visited the campus. But he doesn't want us to use the term general or title, but we'll use your baptismal name, Van, correct? So let me read a little bit about who you are, because a person like you doesn't come to us often. And I thank you really for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be part of the Answering the Call program that we have on our campus. General Norvell Coots has served in the United States Army for more than 30 years. In his last assignment, he was the commanding general of the U.S. Army's Europe Regional Medical Command and the command surgeon for the U.S. Army in Europe. He was also the senior U.S. medical diplomat in Europe for NATO and has the rank of brigadier general. He arrived in Chisinau to find thousands of institutionalized children living in difficult conditions, and in 2000, he started a project for aiding them. Dr. Coots, or Van, is currently the president and CEO of Holy Cross Health and the president of Moldova project that supports children in Moldavia. He was baptized in the Orthodox Church in Moldavia. We're honored again to have you with us, and thank you for taking the time. I'm sure students will have plenty of questions when we're done.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you all.
You've had an extensive career. You've been serving our country for many, many, many years, decades, and of course we honor that service that you have done. What has been the greatest benefit to you personally then?
In terms of what I've gotten out of my service,
yeah.
I think it's just service to others, service above self. It reinforced in me, it fulfilled a need that I had to serve people. And throughout my life, I've lived with the philosophy of see a need and meet the need, and so it allowed me to do that. Being in healthcare, particularly in the military, I got to keep soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, their families healthy, and then in the worst times, the time of war, I get to help put them back together again and return them to a new sense of normal or back to normal and back to their families. And along the way, I got to witness many miracles happen as well.
Did you really?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you remember one for us?
Well, I can remember one from Afghanistan,
okay.
In particular. At Walter Reed, miracles happened every day because there were soldiers who would not have survived in any other war in any other time and probably should not have survived the catastrophic wounds that they had, but they did. And that to me and that to us at Walter Reed was a miracle. But in Afghanistan, I remember there was a young girl who was probably about 3 or 4 years old, and her brother had picked up some unexploded ordnance because these things look like little toys, these cluster bomblets and things like that. So the Afghan kids would pick them up, or they'd pick them up for scrap metal. And he picked up some cluster bomblets and took them home, and it blew up at the front door and killed him, his brother, his father, and wounded the sister. She was blinded, she lost an arm, she lost a leg, she was eviscerated. The French hospital got her, put her back together, and she began to survive and to thrive, and everyone thought that she was doing well. But at a point, she started to die, and they couldn't figure out why, because all the wounds had healed, everything was good, but she began dying. So on a humanitarian basis, they made the decision to transfer her to a local Afghan hospital where her mother could actually see her, because her mother couldn't actually come on our base and be with her. And so we wanted to give the mother a chance to be with the child before she expired. But once that child was in her mother's arms, she began to thrive, and she lived and survived. And so to me, that's the miracle of a mother's love, just like the miracle of the love of the Virgin Mary.
Right.
So that is the biggest miracle that stands out in my mind.
That's incredible. That's incredible. We mentioned in the intro Moldavia. How did you come to be based in Moldavia, and what did you find there? Because something impacted you greatly there.
It did. So I was stationed in Germany at the time under 5th Corps, and this was about 8 or so years after the wall had come down. And so we were doing Partnership for Peace. So my mission was to go to Moldova and do humanitarian works, hepatitis A and B immunizations across the vulnerable population, which was defined as the 11,500 formerly institutionalized orphans in 65 old Soviet-style orphanages. And this is a population of about 7.5 million people with 11,000 children in orphanages. And they're 98% Russian Orthodox or Romanian Orthodox. And so as I went around, I realized that the children had food, they had a place to sleep, they had an education, but they had no creative outlets whatsoever. So I said, what can I do to help here in this country? My country coordinator wanted to take me to the holiest site in Moldova, which is Orhevik, the ancient capital. And there's a monastery perched up on a hill overlooking a river about 1,000 feet up. The monks would build cells in the caves, and that's where the people would hide when the Ottoman Turks would come across Moldova, because that was the dividing line between the Islamic East and the Christian West. And so this is their holy site. There's a cross, a stone cross on a precipice 1,000 feet in the air, and you're supposed to transit the cross, of course, 3 times. And you would get a vision or a mission or something like that. So I did it, I transited, I looked out over the valley, and I heard something say, help my children. And so I talked to the priest, and the priest said, did you hear it with your ears, or did you hear it in your head? I said, I heard it in my head. He said, the Virgin Mary has spoken to you, you must do this thing, help the children. And so I looked at my country coordinator, I said, what will I do? She said, well, I have something for you. I've always wanted to get into those orphanages and do something with those workshops. Can you do something with that? And so that's what my project does. I redid all of the old Soviet workshops, and the children now have a creative outlet. They make carpets and kilims, which they used to do traditionally anyway. They do woodworking. Some of the children make beautiful wooden icons that they carve. They do beekeeping, they do hair, they do shoe repair, they do all these different things. And now some of them can actually get vocational technical certificates out of these programs, so they get an additional start in life. But it really gives them a renewed sense of self-worth. And maybe I keep the girls from being trafficked, and maybe I keep the boys from falling into mafia badness, because at 16, they're emancipated adults and they go to the world. And so
16.
At 16. So that is my mission in life, is to save those children.
Tell us again the numbers, because the numbers are shocking. How many orphans? How many orphanages?
So at that time, there were 65 with 11,500 kids. My project only cares for 3,000 in 10 orphanages. And the country is depopulating now. It has 200,000 less children in it than it did 18 years ago when I started. So the orphanage population has shrunk too. But they had an orphanage for children with infectious diseases. Well, in this country, we treat the infectious disease. They had an orphanage for children who were blind. What they had was amblyopia that we could do an operation for and correct their vision, but by the time they were institutionalized, it was too late and their eyes were already set. So that's the type of situation that I saw as my team fanned out across that country to do that mission.
That's really amazing. Let's switch gears a little bit. And if I probe too much, I use the medical term probe. Tell me to back off.
Okay,
but
sure.
I think our young people, our professors, our deans, will probably want to hear what brought you to Orthodoxy. Because you are not cradle Orthodoxy. You're a convert to Orthodoxy.
That's correct.
Now, in my eyes, there's no such thing as a convert. Because once you convert, you're Orthodox. You know, we have this thing, we have to label people. You're an Orthodox Christian. What brought you to the faith?
So I think my journey started as a child. I grew up in the Baptist church on my mother's side, on the African Methodist Episcopal churches. On my father's side, I went to Episcopal schools and then Catholic school for high school, where I began to think about really becoming Roman Catholic, because I always seemed to be searching for my fit, the right answers. And being a student of history, I've always been fascinated by that, and I think those ancient things were always attracting me. I fell out with the Catholic Church for a period of time. I fell back into the Catholic Church. My wife and children are Roman Catholic, but it was on one of the missions in Moldova in 2009, just a routine trip back to check on the project, that I was actually called to Orthodoxy. Once again, I heard a message. So I went back to Orhevik. Every visit, I go back and I transit the cross to make sure that I'm still on the right track. And I went and talked to the old priest. He remembered me from that very first meeting. And he looked at me and he said, you know, you need to be Orthodox. I said, Father, thank you, but I'm Roman Catholic. It's okay. I'm working for the Virgin Mary. She doesn't care what I am. It's okay. So later up in the northern part of the country, we went to another monastery, and a young monk was talking on his cell phone, whatever, as I see all you guys doing too, so I think it's an Orthodox thing.
Yeah.
But he put his cell phone away, and he actually came over, and he told my translator, he said, tell him he needs to be Orthodox. And I said, I must have done something wrong in the church, and it looked odd to him, but whatever. So finally, we're back in Chisinau in the capital, and we're just walking down the street in the main shopping district. And a Orthodox priest comes walking by. He's in a hurry. He's moving someplace. He gets past us. He stops, wheels around, grabs my country coordinator by the arm, and he says, tell him he needs to be Orthodox. Wow. So I said, okay, 1, 2, 3, I got it. Yeah. So before I left, we went to the Blue Cathedral, and I became Orthodox. They wanted me to take the name Vladimir. I said, there are too many Vladimirs. This is Russian Orthodox. I'll take Panteleimon, the patron saint of doctors. And so that is today who I am, and that's how I actually came to be called to become Orthodox. In the long run, there was certainly a reason, and I don't know what the full reason was, but there in Moldova, because I was a Westerner, I was an American in a Russian sphere, I was a Roman Catholic in an Orthodox country, I wasn't getting much headway with the church to help with the orphans. And I said, these are Orthodox orphans, why won't they help? The minute I became Orthodox, I got an immediate audience with the Metropolitan, I get a blessing on the program, I get the church's promise to help with the project moving forward. So I said, well, there's the answer, there was the call. I mean, at least in this instance, it opened all the doors immediately.
So Panteleimon, that's a mouthful, huh?
It is indeed.
But it's quite a saint, too.
Absolutely.
That's quite a saint. Let's talk about recent projects. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything that, I mean, obviously, you've been doing projects your whole life here, but how about recently? Anything new?
So the biggest thing I've done is my health system, Holy Cross Health, is a Catholic health system under Trinity Health, which is the third largest Catholic health system in the world. I'm one of 23 regional health ministry leaders. And so I created very, very quickly a program, much faster than I thought I could, for military and veterans health, because that is an underserved population. They have significant needs that the Veterans Administration can't meet, the military health system doesn't. And then for the family members, the spouses, and the children of those who have deployed and served our nation, they have specific needs as well. What I found out across healthcare is no one ever asked the question on screening or on entree to the hospital, have you ever served? And so that need that you're seeing in the emergency department might have PTSD behind it, might have something else. But if you never ask, have you served, you'll never get that answer. So now Trinity Health has introduced, as of the 1st of April, appropriately in the Western Church, Easter, right. Trinity Health Military and Veterans Health Program. So we have done cultural competency training to make sure that our people understand the military when they see them and treat them. And so that is the newest, latest thing, and it's not even a month old.
That's fantastic. You spoke about you spoke about a communication from God, and you said it happened 3 times. Some of us don't get it once. Okay? You got it 3 times. So I want to ask you, what is the most powerful insight that you have had through the course of your life? What is the thing that most affected? Obviously, those 3 communications with the Lord that you felt, that's a big issue. Is there something else that really struck you?
So I think, the retrospectoscope is always 20/20. Yeah. So as I look back over my life, I mean, I had some catastrophic things that happened in my career that really almost ended my career and really almost ended my life. But I recognized that they actually were all for a reason, and everything led up to where I am today. And I've always been very open to things coming my way. I've always had a belief that if God closes a door, he opens a window someplace else. And so my career, even to the rank of general, was never planned. As things came to me, I sort of followed it. So my path was very, very circuitous, but I've always been open. And I think probably that is why I have heard or I've interpreted these messages, is because I've been open to them and not closed. And so they've come my way.
For the future leaders, the leaders of the world, frankly, Orthodox Christians, young men and women, some in the college, some in the school of theology, some studying for the priesthood, some studying in their various careers, their various majors. What advice could you give them?
Well, I think 2 things. Number 1, always keep your eyes and ears open. You know, we all have our personal biases. We cannot let our biases be obstacles to our own success. You have to understand what your biases are, what they do for you in terms of relationships, but be able to put them in your pocket or someplace when you meet people. You never know why somebody crosses into your life, why your paths cross. There's no such thing as coincidence. There's always a reason out there for everything. We have to be open to enough to understand that maybe there's something that will come of this. And the second is my basic philosophy that I give to all of you, which is never give up. And that's something from Winston Churchill from World War II. But I normally talk to healthcare executives and students, and so I break it into three things. Number one, never give up on yourselves. If you don't, first and foremost, believe in yourself, why in the world would you ever expect anyone else to believe in you? You have to have a strong belief in yourself. The second is never give up on your dreams. Everything that you have in this life that defines who you think you are or that you think defines you can be taken away from you. Your home, your car, your family, your clothes, your money, even your good name can be taken away from you. The only thing that you truly own that can never be taken away are your dreams. So you have an obligation to work as hard as you can to make your dreams come true. And then number three, if you were healthcare, I would say never give up on those who have entrusted their lives, their health, and their welfare to you, your patients. But for you, those of you going into the priesthood, I would say never give up to those who entrust their souls and their salvation to you. If you never give up on them, they will never, ever give up on you. So never give up.
Excellent. One final question. If you were to describe Orthodox Christianity to someone who knows nothing about it, what could you say? Because for some I know, they experience this out-of-body alien thing, and they say, what's happening here? So I'm wondering, from your perspective, what would you tell somebody?
So something old, something new, something ancient, something true. It's the origin of all of the church. It's the origin of the church. And I think the most important thing about it is it's as alive today as it was in 33 AD. It is the same church. And if people need an analogy, and I'll say, look at German. German is the root of the English language. If you walk backwards in English, you get to Old English and you get to Old German. If you walk back from the Protestant church or from the Catholic church or from the Episcopal church, where do you wind up? You wind up in 33 AD with the Orthodox Church. Mm-hmm. It is the root and the basis of everything.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's an honor again.
Thank you.
Questions? Say who you are so the general knows.
Jim Skedros. I'm the dean here of Holy Cross. We met earlier today. Thank you so very much for being here and for your really incredibly inspiring words.
Thank you.
I have two questions, one very quickly and then second one a little more thoughtful. Mm-hmm. Your initial appointment in Moldova, was that federally supported or was this a nonprofit that you were working for?
No, it was under NATO.
It was under
Partnership
NATO.
for Peace.
Okay,
so
I didn't
it was a
catch that.
NATO initiative that the United States had a big part of.
Okay. Mm-hmm. My second question is, you grew up in the church. You grew up in churches, right, in parishes, and I'm assuming you attend Orthodox churches and Catholic churches right now as well with your family and whatnot. Do you see parishes having any role in healthcare delivery?
Absolutely.
And could you explain
Sure.
that? Expand
So
on that.
one of the things that we have done at Holy Cross Health is develop a really robust network of relationships with what we call parish nurses, but really it's religious nurses. So every denomination, every church has somebody who is a nurse or a health technician or something like that. So my goal is to create as robust a network as possible to get our health initiatives out to them, but also in this day and age where in my area where we have such a large immigrant population, the fear of deportation has taken people underground. So I have 4 big clinics we do $38 million worth of charity health care every year at these 4 large clinics. But we've seen a drop off because people are afraid that the ICE van is going to circle our clinic, and pick them up. And so I depend on those parish nurses to know where these people are when they sort of go underground. Because my fear is when they pop back up, if they have a bad health condition, it will be much worse when they pop up. Or if, God forbid, there's infectious disease that develops. If they go underground, you have a contagion now developing, which is a public health emergency and a public health nightmare. So I depend on my parish nurses, on my religious nurses out there to kind of keep tabs on their population and report back to us any shifts and any changes in the health demographic of their parishioners, of the members of their churches.
Good. Other questions?
Yes, sir.
Christopher.
Thank you for coming out to speak with us. My name is Devin. I'm a seminarian here. You were talking about never giving up. What are some of the things that you do to stay motivated on a project when it seems like it's hit a huge roadblock, when morale is low within yourself and within the team around you? What are some of the things that you do to keep your own vision intact and then help other people to have that too?
So first and foremost, as a leader, it's incumbent upon you to keep the morale up within your group. Even if you have fears, even if you have your own doubts, you can never show them. You can never let those come through. I mean, and you have to use fear and things like that for what they were designed for. These are ancient instincts to give you an alert, but you can't become paralyzed by that fear. And so what you have to do, you have to lead your people through those crises, through those periods of self-doubt, and continue to motivate them as best as possible. And one of the things that you also do is you don't take a setback as the final thing. You don't see a defeat as a defeat. You can only let it defeat you if you let it defeat you. You're the master of your own fate in terms of that. So take every setback, every obstacle you hit as a learning opportunity. It gives you a challenge to figure out how to get around this obstacle, how to get over it, how to get under it. Or if you failed at this and say, okay, that failed, but how about plan B or plan C or whatever? And again, it goes right back to never give up. So don't let those things stop you, and use each and every one as a learning experience.
Good. Other questions? Dr. Tim?
Thank you, General, for your beautiful talk. I was taking notes on my iPhone. I wasn't texting. What do you think about you mentioned the issue of human trafficking, the bill that was signed in the Oval Office, was it last week? Are we on the right track towards combating human trafficking internationally? What more should the Orthodox Church be doing?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question because I know that trafficking is such a widespread thing. I mean, it's going on right now today, probably right here in the Boston area as well. Every major city has it. I think as people of faith, we need to really reach out. If we see it occurring, we need to report it. If we suspect that it's occurring, we need to get to the right people and make sure that it's investigated. I mean, we cannot be passive about this. We need to take an active role in it. And I'm not saying get out there and flash a badge and enforce it or anything like, because we're not enforcers. But we have to be aware of our situations and our surroundings. And if you ever suspect it, I feel you have an obligation to report it to the right authorities to see that it's at least investigated. Working with our own children, and as I work with the children in Moldova, to do whatever I can to bring them up the right way, to keep them and protect them from being trafficked. And one of those is that sense of self-worth. Because it is 9 times out of 10 people with a low sense of self-worth or who don't have a strong belief in themselves or a belief in their own possibilities for the future who allow themselves to become trafficked. So just my thoughts.
Thank you.
Good. Others?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for being with us today. My name is Jeremy Troy. I'm in my final year of the MDiv here. My question is, you mentioned the efforts that you've had to reintegrate veterans into civilian life. What do you see as being some of the primary needs that returning veterans have that our churches can meet?
So I think that's a great question. Thank you very much for it. One of the things that you have to realize is that anyone who goes to combat, anyone who deploys, even if they're not the frontline troops that are kicking in doors and getting shot at, is fundamentally affected by a combat deployment. Just the environment that you're in and the knowledge that today could be your last day on earth. So no one goes to war and comes back that same person. I mean, I went as a general, I was protected, but I did convoys, I did battlefield circulations by air. And my wife will tell you that I am not the same person who came back. I mean, I have a low level of PTSD. I'm hypervigilant in traffic. I don't like crowds. There are a lot of things that happened to me in the combat zone, and I never got shot at a single day that I was there. So recognizing that there is a fundamental change. There has also been a fundamental change in the family as well, as that service member has been gone for 6, 9, 12, 15 months. The spouse has now taken over and changed. The children have been affected. The children often have secondary PTSD too. So it's not just the veteran, it's the entire veteran's family. So when you see a veteran family that comes into the church, you really need to wrap your arms around them because they may not even recognize the needs that they have. But just knowing that there probably are things going on in the background, there are stresses that are underlying their day-to-day existence, wrapping your arms of fellowship around them will be a big help. And getting to know them, you may actually find out that some of these things are going on. For instance, you know, every time I deployed, my wife would get the will out, get the power of attorney, get everything, just in case she would become a widow, because I had a friend who was doing my exact job in Iraq, and his helicopter was shot down, and his wife did become a widow. My children could not watch television because every time a helicopter was shot down or a convoy was hit and blown up when I was in Afghanistan, my kids were sure that I was dead. So they have PTSD to the point where anytime I travel now, the night before I travel, they pile in the bed on top of me because they don't want to let me go because they're afraid that if I go, it may be the last time that they see me. And I said, I'm just going up to Boston to speak at Holy Cross, you know, but they're like, baby, we don't want you to go. So in my family, what can you imagine what happened to that soldier who was an infantryman or a frontline Marine or a Marine corpsman, Navy corpsman, or a medic who actually saw firsthand the horrors of war every day. Every day I prayed a prayer of thanksgiving that I lived to see the day. Every night I prayed a prayer of thanksgiving that I survived the day into the night. That was my 24-hour cycle for an entire year. And every time I rolled off the base, I prayed the 23rd Psalm, particularly, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, because I knew I was in the valley of the shadow of death every single day. So when you live with thinking that you're going to die at any given moment, your life fundamentally changes in ways that those who haven't deployed and haven't been there can't understand. So be understanding of these folks and know that there may be something else going on, and that's the biggest help that you can give them. Long-winded story, but it gets
very
back
good
to
one,
it.
though.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes. Nikki, get the microphone.
Hi, my name is Nikki. I'm a first-year MDiv student. Just to clarify, you said that, so you yourself, you're Orthodox, but your family is Catholic?
My family's Roman Catholic.
Just expand, like, how is that? How is the dynamic of just, like, your kids understanding that you're Orthodox? Like, is it a shared experience that they kind of go back and forth every other Sunday or whatnot?
No, right now they're 10 and 9, and so my agreement with my wife is they are both baptized and have had their first communion in the Catholic Church. So until they're a certain age, we will attend Mass together in the Catholic Church and we'll raise them Catholic. My wife is from South America, from Colombia, and the Catholicism that they practice there is like 18th century Catholicism. It's very old Catholic. We just got back from Holy Week with the processionals and the penitents in purple and everyone going to everyone's church at midnight on Good Friday. And so she was fully supportive of my conversion because she said, if the Lord has spoken to you, if God's spoken to you, you have to do this thing. She goes, but I'm still Roman Catholic and the kids are going to be Roman Catholic. And I said, roger that. I got
Roger that.
Keeping peace in the house is very important. The kids will at some point in time go to Orthodox Masses with me, and then at that they can make a choice themselves. But right now we want to make sure that they have a good foundation just in faith and in the church itself, and without being confused as to, is it this way or is it this way, and did I just do the sign of the devil because I didn't complete the cross? I don't want to confuse them.
Okay. Thank you. Another question? Father Gregory?
Thank you again for being here.
Absolutely.
I'm Father Gregory. I'm the Director of Admissions. We met briefly. I liked what you said about see the need, meet the need. And I'd like you to expand on that a little bit if you would. And, because if you open your eyes, the needs are everywhere. They're not just in Moldova or in they're not just in Africa. They're right here in this room. They're everywhere. And so can you talk a little bit about your discernment process on when you see a need? I mean, because obviously we can't save everything. We can't attack everything. We can't. So can you talk about how you discern the needs that you'll address when you see them versus the ones that you'll say, that's not mine right now. I can't attack. About your discernment on that.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just recognizing that, as you said, there are needs everywhere. We don't have to go overseas to find needs. There are needs around us all of the time. And I think none of us have the bandwidth in today's fast-paced world to be able to spread ourselves too thin. And so as I decide what it is I'm going to put my energies to, I look at who else might be out there doing it. And if the field is full, then I don't try to enter that field. If I find people who need help in that, I try to steer them to the right people, the right agencies, the right nonprofits that are doing that. And part of my work with the veterans is that same thing, to guide them in the right way. But if it's something having to do with children, if it's something having to do with the future of people, that is where I spend my time working. So any organization that supports healthcare for children, education for children, anything like that, I will choose between those and see where I can be of the most help. So that is my personal discernment process. Now, in the Catholic Church, discernment can take 4 to 6 years if you talk to the sisters. So we choose wisely what we want to have an actually operational discernment about too.
Okay. And the others?
Yes, ma'am.
Despina.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us. I'm Despina Wilson. I'm a second-year MDiv student here. And I was wondering, you talked about the drastically shifting demographics in Moldova right now, specifically how there is such a drop in orphans. Is that because so many children have aged out? Is that because there's an increasing adoption rate? And then on top of that, is that causing more issues or just changing issues that you need to address now?
So thanks for that question. It's multifaceted. So I'll start with, so the drop-off in orphans reflects the drop-off in population. When I first started going to Moldova, there were, out of 7 million people, 1.2 million children. There are only about 400,000 children in Moldova right now. Part of it is that people have moved to Europe. Moldova is trying to become part of the EU, but people have moved to Europe for a better job, a better way of life. The average doctor in Moldova makes $400 a month. So you can imagine if a doctor makes $400, somebody else is making $100 or $200, and you really can't live off of that. There have been adoptions. Adoptions were stopped for a while because there was a family in the United States that abused 2 Moldovan children, and so the Moldovan government kind of shut the door, just like the Russians shut the door for a period of time on adoptions. North Carolina adoptions is the only place in the United States certified through which you can adopt Moldovan children, but there are fewer and fewer of them now. So they've closed a number of the orphanages. The EU has told Moldova to become a part of the EU, you have to close orphanages. There's no such thing as an orphanage in the EU any longer. So they have tried to create a system of social services in a country that has never known social services before and doesn't have the bandwidth for it. So my project has actually modified a little. The children no longer live in orphanages, but they go back to the orphanage for school, for food. And so I keep my programs going. Or I've moved my programs into a community center in whatever the largest village in the area of villages is. And if they're children from the village who come to my project, that's fine too. They don't have to be orphans. I will take all children who need that outlet. So I have morphed and changed as the country has changed as well. In the long run, it's a problem for the country because it's beautiful land there. It looks like Tuscany with gently rolling hills. Everything's under vine because that was the winemaking capital of the old Soviet Union too. But now they don't have people to work the land. Only 10% of the land is being worked. And every year they lose 25 to 50 villages that are just completely depopulated. So the Moldovan government is actually looking at bringing in Chinese because there are so many Chinese in China that they could come and work the land. So, 50 years from now, Moldova may become a Chinese country. You never can tell.
We might do some recruiting in China too. We're thinking about it. I'm kidding. Other questions? Yes, Paul.
My name is Paul Murray. I'm a first-year MDiv student. I spent last year a week in Romania with a priest who did a lot of projects there, like exactly what Father Greg was talking about with like the See a Need and Meet It. There was like a safe house for pregnant women considering having abortions where they could go, and then he started an orphanage to raise the children that they would have, a sewing shop so that they can get back on their feet. And just all of these are now like self-functioning things because of one man's kind of ability to see a need and be willing to do something about it. From your experience, do you see those kind of projects as having more barriers in the United States, or do you think that those kind of things would still be very possible to implement here for needs such as those?
No, I think you can do it. I mean, in America, we have a lot of barriers. Anyway, we have a lot of federal regulation. You regulate 501c3 charities. There are all kinds of. So there are layers and layers of bureaucracy that we have to deal with. But at the end of the day, seeing a need and meeting a need, you somehow or another figure a way to work within those guardrails or overcome them to meet the need. There is certainly a need out there. There are women's clinics that pop up all the time. There are safe houses for women who get abused. If you see abused women and there's no place for them to go, you do need to create a place to do it. I mean, I grew up with that. My dad donated land for a home for unwed mothers back in the 1940s in Oklahoma when he was a practitioner because he saw a great need for that. And so he said, this is the least I can do is give them a land to build a center upon to do that. So I sort of grew up seeing that happen. So no, there's a tremendous need right here in this country for all kinds of things. And the more immigrants that we get in from Central America, from Africa, from wherever they come, there are big needs within those immigrant populations as well. And the quickest way to assimilate them and to show them the grace of being an American and things like that is to create these programs and projects that will actually support them.
Very good. Any more questions? James.
I'm James Hargrave. I'm a second-year MDiv student here. Both in talking about working with parish nurses in this country and your work in Moldova, I'm hearing a lot of collaboration and a lot of creativity and collaboration. Some of it is miraculous, as you said. You became Orthodox and suddenly the church was ready to collaborate. But what can you say to, especially to someone who might be a parish priest who sees lots of needs, probably cannot personally, individually meet all those needs, about identifying leaders in the community, about supporting them, collaborating with them?
So stepping up and looking for partnerships, it's always about diplomacy. Everything in the world, everything that we do, even in my health system working, we're a partner with the Adventists. And Catholics and Adventists are like Catholics and Baptists trying to come together and work together. But it happens when you step out and step beyond what it is that defines you and what it is that defines them and meet them on a personal level. And that is the art of diplomacy. How do you meet the person at their personal level to be able to develop that partnership? That's where you have to get. In Afghanistan, it was 4 cups of tea. And I don't know if you've read that book, 4 Cups of Tea, but I had to learn to be patient and to realize that if I wanted to meet with the Afghan generals and talk to them about their healthcare system, I had to go through at least three cups of tea and 3 meetings where we just sat and drank tea and ate little niblets and just chatted about how's the weather, or tell me about your family back at home, or something like that. So it's all about diplomacy. Meet the person on their level, and then, get that spark, and develop those partnerships. I will tell you that a lot of the Orthodox churches in my area, we've got Romanian Orthodox, we've got, I mean, just any Orthodox brand we have, they seem very closed. And even when I went in with Project Moldova, I said, hey, this is an Orthodox project in an Orthodox country. No, we're not interested. So we need to get beyond the impression that people have of us as being closed and insular. You know, that's the first step too. If you're seen as open and out and about and a big part of the community, then that partnership is much easier to come. Don't expect them to come to you. You have to go to them.
Very good. We'll stop.
Can I tell one more story?
Sure, please.
So this is a story of Afghanistan. This is a religiosity story because, you know, you become much more religious when you think you're going to die. Because, you know, the next day I hope to get those keys to heaven and get to the right place. So there was no Orthodox priest. And even though we had Orthodox nations a part of the coalition, they didn't bring their priests with. So I went to Catholic Mass, and my priest told me, he said, that's fine. He said, you're Roman Catholic and Orthodox. You've actually healed the schism within you, so God bless you for that. So I went to Mass. I went to Mass every day. I went to Veneration of the Virgin Mary on Friday nights, if I was in the area on Friday nights. I wore a scapular. I still wear my scapular. I had a rosary in each of my sleeve pockets and each of my leg pockets so that my arms and legs wouldn't get blown off. I mean, so there is a certain level of religiosity. And I'm saying this for those of you who might be considering becoming chaplains in the military, which we need. There are not enough Orthodox chaplains in any of the military services. They are few and far between and hard to find. But just realize that you would be entering a world where people do become hyper-religious and really do come to Jesus, more or less. You know, even those who haven't been faithful suddenly realize, wait a minute, there might be some benefit. So you can do some of your best work in the military in terms of saving souls and bringing people to the church. So just food for thought.
Thank you very much. Let's hear a round of applause. Thank you again.
Thank you.
God bless you, sir.